Is the spring election in the air? Well, could be, depending on who you ask. Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist with the Toronto Sun. Want to bring in my colleague, bon vivant, columnist, and all-around good guy, even though he once was described as a liberal, Warren Kinsella. Warren, are the Liberals looking to go to the polls still? You know, I was thinking with the vaccine debacle, that wouldn't be happening just now, but I'm starting to get the sense that Trudeau's still feeling pretty confident.
They're not as confident as they were. I mean, you're absolutely right. They wanted a spring election. They thought a spring election could be won, but their vaccine fiasco, and it is a fiasco. 70% of Canadians say Leger, say Angus Reid, 70% blame the federal government for dropping the ball on vaccines. That's a dangerous environment in which to have an election. So I'm not sure it's in the cards anymore. The best ally, the best asset that Trudeau's got, the one thing that may ensure that we have an election, Erin O'Toole. Trudeau may be dropping, but Erin O'Toole is not moving up.
Okay, let's talk about O'Toole in a minute, but let's deal with Trudeau first and where he might be. I agree, vaccines been a debacle. People are frustrated with it, but we're about to get a bunch of vaccines. Still not enough in my view. Only enough to vaccinate less than 8% of the entire population. But he says we will get them by the end of March. So we have a budget the last week of March or second last week of March. We get all these vaccines. He gets to say, rah, rah, we're going great. Jostle with the opposition for a week or two. And then right after Easter, go to the Governor General, whoever that is, and ask for Parliament to be dissolved because, you know, we're through the worst of COVID now and he needs a mandate to build back better.
I don't believe anything that he has to say on vaccines. I'm from Missouri. Show me, prove it to me. You know, this is the guy who said that we had more vaccines per capita than anybody in the world. And then a few days later, our Pfizer supply died. It stopped. It was zero. This is the guy who said, don't worry about Pfizer. We're going to have everything we need from Moderna. And Moderna cut theirs back by 50%, I believe, and so on. I just don't believe anything that he has to say about vaccines. And I think a lot of Canadians share that view. That's why there's 70% of them saying Justin Trudeau has dropped the ball on vaccines.
And fully agree on that. But my point is, I think he's trying to set the table so that if he's able to make the claim of look at all these vaccines. Now, if the provinces would just get them in the arms, we'd be good. That then he can go to the polls. You know, he had his big transit announcement, $15 billion worth of money that will start flowing in 2026, which is after the next mandate if he gets a majority government. The gun control legislation that, you know, myself from the gun rights side says is nothing but politics and an awful bill, and that the Ecole Polytechnique Survivors Group also says is nothing but politics and a garbage bill. But he's putting these things in the window because he knows, okay, I can get certain demographics with all these things. He's even trying to get a deal. This is something I found out behind the scenes. He's trying to get a deal with the provinces on agriculture because there are certain rural ridings that he needs to win. And if he can say, I've got another program for farmers, then he can take that into the election. So I think he's trying to set it up so that if things turn around for him, he can go. And if not, well, maybe he just holds off to the fall.
Yeah, but all of the stuff that you've just said, the key word you use throughout is if. And the bottom line, my friend, is that he just has not delivered. He has not done what he said he would do. You know, as of this morning, according to Our World and data, we are worse than the 50th position globally for vaccinations. Worse than 50. You know, and best case scenario, as you pointed out to me on the weekend, we may be mid 45. We're a G7 modern nation with one of the best healthcare systems in the world, and we're in the mid 40s in terms of vaccinations. This means that we are going to, number one, have Canadians die who should not have died, and number two, that our economy is going to be behind the economy of all of our allies in Europe and the Americas and elsewhere. And that is on the doorstep. That is the fault of this Prime Minister.
Erin O'Toole, the Conservative leader, he is, I don't know what to say. I was about to say that he's hitting the right points on some things, but not delivering in a great way. But That's not exactly true. On a day 2 weeks ago when he should have just been beating up Justin Trudeau for a full day over vaccines not being arriving and Canada dipping into the food bank of vaccines, COVAX, he was asking the Prime Minister about the Line 5 pipeline, which, yeah, it supplies Ontario and Quebec, but people in central Canada won't care about it until they're freezing in the cold and their cars won't start because there's no gas and no heating oil. So O'Toole doesn't seem to have found his footing yet. He's more than 6 months in now. Is it too late to find your footing at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly he needs some more time, but he needs to get his act together. Like, this is a prime minister who is now officially unpopular on the number one issue that Canadians are talking about and thinking about, which is the pandemic, which is vaccines, which is getting out of this terrible situation we're all in. On that file, Justin Trudeau is losing, but Erin O'Toole is not winning. So he needs to, in my opinion, get the hell out of Ottawa and start pitching his story in the regions. He needs to have less of a focus on Trudeau. You know, I get the fact that the Tory base hates Trudeau, but obviously there's some Canadians who don't hate him. You know, they think that he's, you know, an okay guy. Less of a focus on Trudeau, more of a focus on the pandemic. Move it to the regions and start talking about some positive ideas you've got. That's what Biden did during the presidential, and he won it. O'Toole needs to have less of a fixation on Ottawa. You know, when I worked for Mr. Chrétien, one of the things I learned from him is people hate it when Ottawa is just talking about Ottawa all the time. Talk about my life. Talk about how you're going to improve my life. Talk about things that are real to me. And O'Toole's guys are just not doing that. They're basically the most invisible opposition party that I've seen in many, many years. They need to get more visible, they need to get more positive, and they need to get out there and start talking to Canadians.
They've been trying to not be hammering the government too much on the pandemic. And I think it's because early on, Canadians wanted to see their elected leaders working together on things like CERB and rent relief and all these other programs when the economy was shut down. Do you still have to take that tact and go around and talk about the economy in general, or talk about pipelines, or talk about something else? Or do you think the public mood is now such that you can say, look, you're screwing up, and that means the economy won't open. You're screwing up, and that means that, you know, I still can't see my family. I think those are valid points that the public would accept.
Absolutely. The pandemic is a theme. It's like an umbrella that connects all of those things you just mentioned. People understand. You don't have to be an economist to understand and agree that if, you know, we don't deal with the pandemic, we're not going to have an economy. They understand and agree that if you don't deal with the pandemic, we're not going to have a functioning healthcare system that deals with people who have got cancers and elective surgeries. They understand that we need to deal with this. And that is the opportunity for Erin O'Toole to say, Justin Trudeau's not dealing with it. Like, we're being beaten by Gibraltar and Mauritius in terms of vaccines. The Americans are vaccinating 2 million people a day on some days.
We don't even have 1.3 million people vaccinated. And, you know, I know the Trudeau cult members out there want to say that's because premiers are leaving them in freezers. Look, they just didn't get sufficient shipments for a long time. Pfizer was delayed this week by the snowstorm in the States. Hopefully that's over now, and you know, they're supposed to show up Wednesday and Thursday, so hopefully everything shows up and we're able to start going quickly again. But the idea that it's anybody's fault but Trudeau is beyond me, that anyone would believe that. Well, we'll see if there is an election, and it's if it is a spring one, I think Erin O'Toole is in for a big fight. If it stays until the fall, everything will change by then. Warren, good talking as always.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, make sure you drop us a line, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel.